Welcome in, brand new Friday Scramble, July 15th, 2022, round 2 of the Open Championship happening right now. I'm Rick Gehman, that right there. Andy Lack. Andy, look at this board. Look at this course. Look at this Tiger. Look at this everything.
I couldn't be more pleased with how this has played out the first 2 days. It's not often that a tournament gets so hyped the week of, which this tournament had. And it delivers, right? Sports doesn't always work out that way. And so far, this championship has delivered on all levels for me personally. So I'm excited to talk things through with you today.
Let me just read through some of the names on the leaderboard. Cam Smith, Dustin Johnson, Cam Young, Scotty Scheffler, Terrell Hatton, Taylor Gooch, Adam Scott, Patrick Cantlay. You go down a little bit further, you find Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory McIlroy. I mean, it's like, it's amazing. It's everything.
Yeah. And, I think probably the only bummer that we have is that we're not going to see Tiger over the weekend. But in terms of the storylines that we hoped for heading into the week, we talked about how interesting it would be if some of the live guys played well. Well, we've got that. In fact, the biggest live fish is right there. Spieth and Rahm are lurking, right? There's some guys at 4 and 5 under par that aren't out of it. Cameron Smith is a big name. He's a top 8 player in the world, and he's right there. Rory is there. Cantlay is there. Some of the spicy Euros that we like Hatton, and a guy like Adam Scott looking to, avenge some previous Open Championship struggles is there. An up-and-coming potential star in Cameron Young is there as well. I mean, this has everything that you would hope for heading into the weekend at St. Andrews.
And they are going to battle it out on the old course, which is playing a hair easier here on Friday. They got some rain kind of overnight and into the morning hours. But overall, how has your expectations of how the old course is playing, how's that panning out so far?
I think it's panning out how I expected. I mean, I was never in the camp that this was going to be a birdie fest. I did say, listen, at a championship like this, at a course like St. Andrews, take par out of the equation, right? Like, prepare yourself for the fact that this is not going to be a US Open. It's not even going to be a recent PGA championship where the winner is probably 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 under par, and the cut's going to be +3, +4, +5. You are going to see birdies on this course, but I think what makes St. Andrews interesting and different from some of the easier PGA Tour courses, which maybe produce the same scores, is that the golf to getting those birdies is going to be a lot more interesting, right? There's so many different roadmaps that you can take to have a birdie at St. Andrews and to shoot a low score at St. Andrews. And on the other side of that, trouble is lurking on every turn. Like, this is the type of course where you sort of feel like, okay, you can shoot a 64 here, but you can also shoot a 74, 75, a 76. And I think that's what makes it such a great championship so far.
Well, I think that's how I kind of look at some of these majors too, or some of these golf courses in general, is you can look at what the leaders are at, but look at the range of scores, right? From guys who are like legit full-time PGA Tour players, Gary Woodland, Mark Leishman, Harris English, they're all 6 over. If you want to throw Sepp Straka into the mix, he's 9 over. He's got holes to play. That might get better, might get worse. But like, just the range of outcomes, right, is like, if it was a birdie fest, everybody would be under par. There'd be no guys that are struggling. That's not the case.
No, it's not at all, right? And I agree with you. I love that there's kind of this giant dispersion, right? Where good shots are rewarded and bad shots are penalized, right? And you can go out and shoot a score on this course. Cam Smith literally just rolled in another birdie as you were talking. He's at 11 under right now. But I do think the course is going to play more challenging in the afternoon, Rick. And we've already started to see that a little bit. The wind changed directions, which is interesting to me, and kind of fun and cool as a golf viewer, because the way that the holes played in the morning, you're going to get to watch the afternoon guys play them, and they're going to play totally different on some of these, which I think is really fun. But no, I mean, as we stand on early Friday afternoon local time, with a bunch of guys early, a bunch of the afternoon wave early in their round, if I told you 15 under Sunday afternoon winning score, would you sign for that?
If I was anybody not named Cam Smith, I probably would.
Yeah. It's supposed to blow a little bit more on
Yeah.
Saturday. I think no is the right answer, but I'd probably sign for 18, right? I
I
wouldn't
would
go.
definitely sign for 18. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about a couple of these guys here. So Cam Smith, as you noted, just made another one. Now 6 birdies in his first 10 holes. He's at 11 under. He's 2 shots clear of DJ, who's already in the clubhouse. Cam Young, who is about to make the turn. The odds over at Caesars, he's the favorite right now. And let's talk about like what this looks like the rest of the way. When he gets going with the short game and with the flat stick, and he's turned into a really good ball striker outside of every once in a while he misses big left. Like if he can keep the driver in play, which is generally much easier to do in most situations here, like there's no reason to think he's going away anytime soon.
Yeah, there's no reason to think he's going away at all. Seeing some questions in the chat. Do you think Cam Smith is going to like run away here? I do not. I do not think that he is going to. I think this is going to be a really interesting tournament over the weekend, right? I think that Cam Smith, he probably, if he can get in the clubhouse at 11, 12 under par and maybe enter the weekend with a 2-3 shot lead, I think that's certainly possible. But I think that there are too many good players behind him that this tournament's going to be super exciting on Saturday and Sunday. Cam Smith is the deserving favorite, though. I will say that. Like, do you see a guy like Rory? Do you think Rory can maybe get there or catch him this afternoon? Or who are some of the guys that are there on the course? Maybe a Cameron Young. Do you see a Cameron Young or a Rory getting to 10 or 11 today?
I mean, Young could definitely get there. Rory's at 6 under. Rory's got to kind of start piling up a few here soon, because this is the day you're probably going to be able to take advantage of the golf course, and you don't want to play yourself out of it in one single round like we've seen Rory do sometimes on Fridays and Saturdays at major championships. So Rory's got to get a couple under par. But yeah, Cam Young's very live. Like his skill set around the old course, being able to hit it as far as he does, but having a better short game than a lot of his peers that hit it as far as he does. Like that's a pretty good combo around this place.
It's a great combo. And you see, even just watching him, this style of golf very much seems to reward the way that Cam Smith plays, right? Like there are a lot of holes at the old course where you have to be aggressive and you have to take on certain bunkers. And that's what Cam Smith tends to do. In terms of, creativity has turned into such a buzzword this week, but you do watch Cam Smith on some of these shots around the greens. And I've seen him take it in really low. I've seen him come in really high and spinny with some shots. And that's kind of the formula that you need generally at a course like St. Andrews. And he's certainly risen to the occasion.
We've done this little game for a while where it's like, what's the path to anyone else winning the Player of the Year award? Which is like, I don't believe that there is a path, right? The path might be like Xander wins this and then wins the FedEx Cup. What if Cam Smith won this and the FedEx Cup? So he would have Sony. No. He would have Tournament of Champions. He would have the Players. He would have the Open Championship and the FedEx Cup. Does that beat Scotty Scheffler's year?
Yeah, it does. The Players is the 5th biggest tournament of the year.
Yeah. You'd have 2 of the 5 biggest and the FedEx Cup, which they obviously care about.
Well, you basically have to ask yourself, we'll call winning the Open and the Masters a wash. Mm-hmm. Especially also keep in mind, and Scotty Scheffler looks like he's going to be contending this week, but Cam Smith finished 2nd at the Masters. So it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily just about wins, but I think I like to look at how you perform at all the other majors. And by the way, Scheffler is a second at the US Open and a playoff
Right.
loss at Colonial as well. But you're basically asking yourself, does the match play, Arnold Palmer and Bay Hill, is that those three tournaments, is that better to you than the FedEx Cup? Because if he won the FedEx Cup, so he's win Eastlake, I guess you could win the FedEx Cup without winning any other tournament. But yes, I think that Century Tournament of Champions, all by the limited field, the players, and winning the FedEx Cup would probably be more impressive than Scheffler's non-3 majors wins. And you could argue either way, though. Bay
There are a
Hill's
lot of
big,
like,
yeah.
I to kind of also be like, yeah, there are other, like, these guys finished runner up in some of these majors, right? Like there's a lot happening. And by the way, like if Scotty Scheffler finishes second here and he's got a Masters win, a runner up at the US Open, and a runner up at the Open Championship, like, and the other wins, like that's still such an unbelievable year.
Yeah. No, and I think Scheffler is like, Scheffler's not going away, right? Like he is going to, he's probably going to regress from winning like 50% of his starts this year. But he's going to continue to be a factor down the stretch in the FedEx Cup and on all of these leaderboards and this weekend as well, right? Like is anyone surprised if Scotty Scheffler wins the Open this week? I think the answer is obviously no. And his play, I want to ask you about Scheffler real quick while we're on the topic. Like he is undebatably underrated in the fantasy community. Like Scotty Scheffler did not garner a lot of ownership this week again. Do you think that he is underrated in like the larger golf community? Because I know there's this thing going on for a little bit there with Scotty doesn't pass the eye test. It's a heater. Like I'm trying to figure out like what more does the guy have to do to be recognized in that conversation as like a guy that is not only the best player in the world, but has staying power and maybe the potential to be like not a generational golfer, but one of the best of the next 5-10 years.
I don't know what he has to do, but I believe that he is very much underrated in the larger community. He was asked about it, like, I think it was earlier this week, and he said something like, I don't necessarily feel as if I'm treated like a number one player. And he kind of, as he tends to do, like turns that into a positive. Like, oh, I get to just go out there and play golf. Like, I'm not worried. Like my scores and my OWGR don't define me, like that version of it, instead of turning it into what a lot of former number ones would have, into a chip on their shoulder. So it's like, I think until his, because he's already had a historic year. So he should already be regarded as very easily one of the top X number of players in the world at all times.
Yeah.
So the fact that he hasn't means that something else has to change for like the larger audience to flip. So he either needs to change the way he speaks about himself, which I don't think is going to happen, or he needs to continue to win like 4 times a year, which probably won't happen just because how deep it is. So I don't know. He could win 15 times and we could in 4 years be like, yeah, he's still underrated. Like people don't realize how good this stretch has been.
I think the fair argument is the longevity piece, right? Because I think that there have been a lot of times, whether it be Jordan Spieth's 2015 or this little 16th month stretch that Jason Day had, where players can catch fire and kind of bottle this greatness for a 12 to 16 month stretch, right? But very few players are able to sustain that for years at a time, right? It's like something like Rory Mcilroy. Rory Mcilroy for the past decade hasn't always been the best player in the world, but he's never not been a top 10 player, right? And certain players like Jason Day or Jordan Spieth who were at one point in their career for a 12 to 16 month stretch, the undisputed best player in the world, have also fallen outside of the world's top 100. So I think with Scotty, what remains to be seen, I guess the only fair argument for maybe him not getting the deserved credit yet is, does he stay a top 10 player in the world next year? I don't think he needs to have half the season that he did this year, right? I don't think he needs to win 3-4 times next year, but can he stay a top 5, a top 10 player in the world for 2 years, 3 years, right? I think that's kind of the next question with him.
The Live boys are contending. So DJ, 9 under par as of this moment, 2 shots back. That might change depending on what the cams do, Young and Smith. Taylor Gooch, 7 under par. There's a couple others. Oh, answers at T13. They're playing well, which is not only an interesting subplot, but also I think pretty important, Andy, right? We've talked about the implications of OWGR points and that this might be the last really big crack at OWGR points for the next 9 months. So not only do I think is it interesting if we start getting that storyline down the stretch, but I also think for some of these guys who want to continue to play in major championships, these points are very, very important.
Yeah. Do you know off the top of your head, like what does a top 8-10 finish in the Open do? Does it get you into all the majors for next year?
I had a worksheet on this from like a week or two ago. I can find it. So I think
I can vamp too while you look for it. Cause I was just going to say it would be a very DJ thing. Hovland just got to 5. He's rolling in birdies. It would be a very DJ thing to do to win the Open Championship and not have to worry about qualifying for majors the next couple of years.
Let's see. Qualification. So these are all going to be, let's look at the open qualification. Come on. Of course, now I guess the internet's pretty, the open.com is getting a lot of hits right now, but I think top 10 gets you into the next year. And then they've got a lot of these guys who have past champion status for like the US Open or the PGA are basically 5-year exemptions. And then outside of that, it's mostly like top 50 in the OWGR that would get you in, or if you were on the Ryder Cup teams. But we know that that's probably up in the air at this point. So top 10ing it is probably their way to get in.
Did you see, by the way, the official World Golf Ranking statement on Live?
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. We are investigating the situation.
Yeah, it's and I like that that statement came out on the 12th. It said we received the application on the 6th. So it took you 6 days to come up with we are now going to begin the process of looking into this.
This is a really good question in the chat. Do you think if a Live guy wins, it will give more credence for the Live Tour to have OWGR points? Could you look at it as a validation in some respects?
Yeah. Yes. So we talked about this before, where if the entirety of your organization, the OWGR, is created to decide who the best players in the world are, and that's kind of like what their main mission is, right? That if you are not including a tour where objectively like some of the best guys are, it weakens your organization. Now they have to decide whether they care about that or whatever else. But I do believe, like, okay, so if DJ won this, I don't know what his OWGR would go to. I'd imagine he'd get a pretty good boost. Like, are you really going to say the guy who's 8th in the world and the guy who's 15th in the world and the guy who's like 22nd in the world, where they play on a regular basis, we don't track? I think it's a harder argument to keep those guys out if they are ranked very, very highly at the time.
Right. So I generally agree with you, but I don't know what this means for the actual quote unquote competition that's happening in the Live events, right? Like to me, if DJ wins the Open Championship and if Taylor Gooch finishes top 10 and Patrick Reed finishes top 10, that doesn't really change how I view what's happening in Live Portland or Live Bedminster. That doesn't make me feel any different about what's happening those weeks. That doesn't make me feel like that competition is more validated to me, if that makes sense.
No, I agree with you, but through the lens of the OWGR, don't they have to view that differently? Or don't they have to, like, their entire goal is to say, their entire organization is to say,
identify the best players in the world.
And how do these tours compare to one another? So while I say, oh, that they don't compare at all, like the OWGR has to say, how do they not compare? Or how much do they, or how do we weigh these? Or like, that's their job, is to figure that out.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate, if all the best players in the world went to play like the Hero World Challenge or something like that, would they have to recognize that just because all the best players are there? Because I think that's the argument for Live, right? Is it's like, well, so many great players are there already, and these guys are also proven to be still great players at the top of their game because they are performing on the biggest stage at the Open Championship. But does their presence validate the competitive aspect of these 54-hole shotgun starts that don't technically qualify for, that don't technically meet the requirements of an event?
So that in the way that I think would pan out, the answer would be no. I think Live is going to be they're going to be at 72 holes before.
I agree. They got to change, right? I think they're going to change.
Also, which is good. Are they going to change the name? Because Live is Roman numerals 54. So are they going to have to like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they've already rebranded a team name. So, maybe it's in play.
I think there will be, if I look a year into the future, I see a world in which Live plays like, where there are like 72 golfers for 72 holes and no cut, and they have gotten OWGR points that way. But I also still feel like the guys who are currently there now without these big finishes are probably going to go 9 months or a year without gaining a lot of points. And you're going to see a lot of guys fall, but I think Live is eventually going to get sanctioned.
Right. Yeah. Well, the one thing that I would say is, doesn't it feel a little bit like the RNA tipped their hand a little bit and where they might be voting, with the fact that they didn't really want Greg Norman to come to the Champions Dinner? I think there are 7 votes on the official World Golf Rankings Committee. One of them is Keith Pelley from the European Tour. One of them is Jay Monahan, and we know where Jay's voting.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of them is the RNA, Martin Slumbers. And the fact that they didn't really want any of the smoke at their Champions Dinner, that seems to me like a hint of how they might feel a little bit about Live. So that's 3 of 7 votes. That's 3 of 7 votes already.
Yeah. Then you get, PGA of America on board, or Augusta. Like, some of these like really old hoity-toity, like the RNA is just like we invented golf. Like, we don't need you, Greg Norman, to try to reinvent golf or whatever. You could very easily see them siding on no thank you. And I also feel like you could probably get the Masters. You could probably get an Augusta National in too.
Can I ask you another question about this briefly? And then I want to talk about some other things, obviously. But how do you feel about the broadcast, like, aggressively not wanting to mention Live? Like, have you noticed this? Like, even when DJ, like, they're actively avoiding it. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's how it should be? It's part of the context, right? Of course, it's part of the context of these guys playing well. But I guess the other side of that argument would be, we're talking about on the golf course at the Open Championship.
Well, I think it's silly, because I think it's silly to not mention it, because if it came down to it on Sunday and it was the final group was Rory McIlroy versus Dustin Johnson, that would be like a massive storyline, and they would have to address it. And then you can't just be like on Sunday, oh, by the way, Dustin Johnson's been playing for like Live Golf for the last couple of months. So I think it's silly to not address it. And however you want to address it, that's fine. Like, hey, there is, like, it is factual to say, there is a controversial new golf tour that is Saudi backed that X, Y, and Z are playing on. Like that is a factual statement. It is controversial wherever you fall on it. It is Saudi backed and they're no longer playing on the PGA Tour. Like that's a fact. That's a fact. So I think it at least needs to be addressed because they're going to put themselves in quite a pickle if it's Rory and DJ in the final pair.
Yeah, I agree. Part of me is like, maybe it's a little petty. And the other part of me is like, I understand why NBC doesn't really have a ton of interest in acknowledging it. NBC just signs this giant contract with the PGA Tour, right? And they're probably not going to spend a ton of time pumping up the great players, pumping up the air in the tires of the great live players. I don't think there's like a giant conspiracy theory that like the live players got bad tee times or the live players are like not being shown on coverage for a reason. But I did notice it and I wanted to get your take because I thought it was interesting where it seemed to me when I was watching yesterday and this morning, like there was almost this natural aversion from the commentators when talking about DJ to mention any of the live stuff when he was getting shown on coverage.
For sure. And I want to get to Tiger and the live odds and stuff, but real quick, like Rory McIlroy is still even par. He's 6 under, which is right now 5 back. What's he got to get to be in the mix here? Right? Like he cannot finish this round at 6 under par, especially with the way the Cam boys are rolling. He's got to get a couple under.
Yeah. So here's the problem with the leaderboard right now. It's all great players that aren't going to go away. So we're not dealing with like, what's the real lead situation? Like looking at the guys ahead of him, Cam Smith, Cam Young, DJ, Scheffler, Hatton, Patrick Cantlay, like the real lead is what Cameron Smith finishes at. And I think that for Rory to feel good, he needs to finish within 3 of Cam Smith. Is that fair?
It is. He better get going.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think whatever Cam Smith is at, whether it's 11 or 12 or 13, Rory needs to be within 3 of that.
Okay. I want to pull up the live odds. I want to talk about Tiger. I want to talk about some more stuff. I must mention, we are indeed presented by PrizePicks. We don't have props to really go through because of the timing and the nature of the event here. So the code you're looking for to sign up, it's Rick. There's a link in the description to get you a $100 instant deposit match. There's also a huge slate that I imagine they're going to drop soon for round 3 because rounds 1 and 2 have been massive as well. So be prepared for those. The hole by hole stuff looks super interesting for the weekend because of wind changes and things like that. So I imagine I'll be grinding on those and tweeting those out. So make sure you're ready. Use the code Rick. There's a link in the description. We're going to hear an ad from Andy's pod and we're going to continue the conversation with live odds.
Andy Lack is not only the co-host of The Scramble, but also produces his own show, the Inside Golf Podcast. It's available twice a week, focusing on course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategies for every PGA Tour event. Admittedly, I was drawn to Andy for his data-driven approach, which you'll find on his Sunday shows as he breaks down the field. But I'm even more impressed by his passion for course architecture, which offers a different perspective of our great game. Mix those together with insightful and humorous guests who don't take themselves too seriously, and you've got a recipe for a great podcast. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts.
Okay, Andy, here are the live odds over at Caesars Sportsbook. Cam Smith, well-deserved, plus 225. He's your favorite. Rory McIlroy, who, as we just noted, is right now 5 back, getting a lot of respect from the boys over at Caesars. He's 4-1. Cam Young is 7-1, and DJ's 9-1. Those are the shorties. Anything noteworthy that you see from the top of the board here?
Yeah, so I think I just checked while we were in the break, the scoring average. And as expected, I think the afternoon's going to play a little bit harder because of the wind change. So for me, I believe it's going to play over par, right? So for me, I like Cantlay a lot, right? At 18-1. I think that's interesting. I think that a lot of the players on the course this afternoon might struggle just a bit more than we expected, and certainly more than the early morning guys got. So some of those guys that are in the clubhouse at 7, 8, 9, I have some interest in. I think Cantlay is really interesting at 18-1. I caught a lot of his round this morning. He looked really good. Do I think Sahith Theegala is going to win the Open Championship? Probably not. But I don't think he's going to go away over the weekend either. So for me, I was looking probably the most at Cantlay. Maybe Fitzpatrick you can make a pretty good argument for. What about you?
Fitzpatrick's the one that I was kind of like, okay, if I'm going to go further, if I'm going to stray from the top of the board, and I still think like DJ at 9-1 is still pretty interesting.
Right.
Fitzpatrick caught my attention, right? I mean, he has just proven to be a machine. And I don't even mean that just like, even before the US Open win, it was a bunch of top 10s at a bunch of really difficult courses in a bunch of really deep fields. And then he breaks through at the US Open, and then he like doesn't stop at the Scottish. And now he's in the mix again, and he gets to shed rolling around with Tiger for the first 2 days, right? It was like a slog on Thursday. He's in at 6 under. Would not be at all surprised to see Fitzpatrick go out and continue the amazing play that we've seen from him this year, put himself in the mix, and he's 28-1. And we think it might get a little bit harder in the afternoon.
You know, it's so tough because usually at major championships at the halfway mark, there are so many clear ejection candidates. Like I remember at the US Open, it's like Callum Tarran's in third heading into the weekend. Like he's not sticking around. Like Richard Bland is leading the US Open after 36 holes last year heading into the weekend. It's really challenging because I don't see too many clear ejection candidates on this leaderboard. Like, let's play a game for a second. If you had to pick one guy in the top 10 right now that will not finish the tournament in the top 30, who would you pick?
Oh my God. I love Minwoo, but Minwoo would be a top candidate for that. Siwoo might be a top candidate for that just because of his volatile play. I mean, I would say Hatton, but he's been great on the lane. Like maybe Hatton just gets all hot and bothered and goes away. But you're right. Like, I don't know. These guys aren't really going anywhere.
Right. The only answers to that question is Siwoo, Sahith, who I actually don't think is going to eject, Minwoo, and maybe Taylor Gooch, right? Just because Taylor Gooch doesn't have a whole lot of experience really contending in major championships. But, you know, is Adam Scott going to go away? I don't think so. I don't think Adam Scott's going to win. I don't think Adam Scott's going to go away. But like Patrick Cantlay, Rory McIlroy, I guess if we want to go down to the guys in the top 15, don't know how I feel about Yuto Katsugarawa. Rick, is that a name that you have too much familiarity with?
No, I just heard it for the first time right now coming out of your lips. So, I don't think he'll finish. I don't think he's going to make a move up the leaderboard too much over the next couple of days.
Please tell me you have some exposure to our boy Aaron Wise in DraftKings, at least.
Very little in DraftKings. I didn't bet him, which I've got a Cam Smith ticket. I guess that's probably the best thing I've got left there. But no, I've got a very little Aaron Wise. He's always just he like touched the lead on Saturday or Sunday at the US Open, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy's so good.
Mm-hmm. But also, he's pretty good at the PGA too, I believe.
But also like not that good. It's so weird.
Yeah. Siwoo is another one like that where it's like he's been so bad, and then Siwoo is suddenly popping up, which is strange.
The Big Cat, not a good week. 9 over. It was a 78-75. He made 4 total birdies and got pretty emotional walking up 18, knowing that 1, he wasn't going to be around for the weekend, and 2, as he even said himself, very likely the last time he's going to play at the old course in an Open Championship.
Yeah, I still thought the whole I saw some people complaining about they're showing too much Tiger on the coverage this morning. It's like, dude, this is going to be the last time that the greatest player of all time is probably playing a competitive round at the greatest golf course of all time, right? So I I really enjoyed watching Tiger this morning. I mean, it was a pretty like ho-hum round. He made a ton of pars and not really many birdies. I think he made like 9 straight pars. But no, I thought the entire experience this morning, it's hard not to feel emotional and nostalgic about it, right? Like I liked how there was a real sense of moment watching him play 18. I liked how Fitzpatrick and Homa
still good
were able to read the room, right? Yeah. And they slowed down and stopped walking. And Tiger gave us the wave, which, you know, you can interpret in many ways. He didn't stop and give us the wave, which I think is like the main tell that this is the last time, right? But he gave us the wave, which was very Tiger, right? Which is, listen, I'm not going to shut any doors, but I also have the self-awareness to realize that this might be the last time that I play St. Andrews. And I think what he said in the interview with Kara Banks after made a lot of sense to me, right? Which is, I don't think this is going to be my last Open Championship. I'm not sure if I'm going to be back at St. Andrews in 5 years.
Correct. And St. Andrews isn't even on the schedule again. So Tiger said in another interview, I won't be back here in 2030, which is like, do you know something that we don't know? Because the venues have only been announced through 2025 Royal Portrush. So maybe he knows something, but yeah, he didn't stop on the Swolken Bridge and give us the wave, which would be the equivalent of like a wrestler. What do they do? Leave their shoes in the middle of the circle there. That's right. Like, hey, I'm retiring. That's the golf version of that is pausing at the top of the Swolken Bridge and tipping your cap to everybody.
Right. Can I ask you a question? Do you feel like you kind of by Wednesday afternoon, you kind of got duped a little bit? You kind of talked yourself into him a little bit. Or is this what you thought was going to happen?
Great question. And I think when like self-reflection is definitely necessary in this Tiger Woods scenario.
Right.
I'm not sure I got duped, which I guess is the answer that I want to give. But when I look at it, the worst part of his game, and I could go back and watch every shot again, but just taking it in, I thought he was horrible on and around the greens. I thought his speed control, especially with the putter, was horrific. I do not know how many 3-putts he had. I could go look it up, but it was jarring how much worse he was in that area of the game than everybody else, which is really, really surprising because he has told us how important that is. He has told us how important lag putting is at the old course for a decade. And then also he spent so much time there this week and played so many holes. It was like, I was very, very shocked to see how little he had that very important part dialed in. So I don't know. I don't know if I got to, it's just like, how was he so bad with speed control?
So I think there are a couple things there. So one thing that I've heard players talk about, I don't know, I'm probably going to butcher the context of it, but there was an interview where I cannot remember who was talking about it, but, you know, I've heard before the theory that as you get older, putting actually gets more difficult because of your eyesight, right? And so you lose a little bit of your feel on the greens, which is
interesting,
which is surprising, right? Because you would imagine that ball striking would really be the most natural thing to go first, but you see a lot of players start to really struggle with their putting as they get older. And who be it for me to criticize Tiger's prep in a major championship, but it almost does feel like he peaked a little bit too early, right? Like, have you ever
played too much on Monday and Tuesday?
Have you ever been to a golf course before? I remember I went to Pebble Beach about 1.5 years ago, and I was so excited to play Pebble Beach. I got to the range like 2 hours early. I'm not kidding. I hit on the Pebble Beach range for like 2 hours. And by the time it was time for me to tee off, like I played terribly. I played terribly that day. And part of me thinks like, man, I was so surprised to see he played more holes at the old course than maybe any other player in the field. I mean, he was there playing 6 p.m. in the evening, 8 p.m. in the evening. And I wonder if he peaked a little bit too early, because as a golfer, I can relate to that in some way, shape, or form.
It was that to me was just so surprising. I don't think the rest of his game was super sharp either, right? There was some iron shots that he hit that I was like, what the hell was that? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was 10 or 15 yards off, but the stuff on and around the greens was really bad. Also, I do wonder, man, he even said it. So he misses the cut, gives the interview, and he's like, and he like almost immediately went right back to, I wish I would have got a better break on number 1 on Thursday, where he hits it into the divot. And I'm like, damn, man, like, did that stick with like making a double out of the gate and getting smacked in the mouth immediately the last time you're going to play? Like, it's almost like he couldn't get over it, which was a little surprising.
Really surprising. Again, I just find this version of Tiger so much more relatable, right? How many times have you started out a round that you were so excited for, and you double the first hole, and it's just a total gut punch. It's a total kick in the nuts, and it sets the tone for the entire day. And it's so difficult to recover from that. And I think Tiger really struggled with that, right? There's another live guy, by the way. Our guy Saddam Kaikwanjananan is at 5 under as well.
Love that guy.
Yeah, our guy. I think he's
Friend
not
of the
a high.
pod.
Is he a high? He's not a high flyer. He might be a punch GC guy. But anyway, back to Tiger. I find this version of Tiger more relatable, where he doubles the first hole and gets a terrible break. And maybe at this stage of his career, it's a little bit more challenging for him to let something like that roll off his back. I think in the past with Tiger, there's a birdie from Rory. I think in the past with Tiger, it always felt a little bit like he was impervious to adversity, right? And there were going to be, he was so good at weathering the storm, Rick, where, he would be able to, it didn't really matter. And he was always going to find a way to be there. And I think this version of Tiger, might struggle with that a little bit more. I think this version of Tiger needs everything to go a bit more right for him to have a real chance to continue to compete at this level.
I think that's fair. How dare you forget that Saddam is an ironhead? Call yourself a golf fan.
4 aces, by the way, just dominating. I forgot who did. Somebody tweeted out the team leaderboard.
I saw it. Yeah.
But like Gooch, DJ, and Reed, like, do we start dynasty talk? Like, is it too early to start dynasty talk? Like 95, 96 Bulls, like Warriors, like where do the 4 aces rate in terms of great sports teams of the last 20 years?
I mean, they're unbeatable at the moment. Who could, like, we'll see when this run finally ends, but I can't imagine it's going to finish anytime soon. All right, we'll end on this, Andy. We'll get out of here. Your dream final group or groups, like we'll assume they're 2 balls. However deep you want to go here. What are we looking at? Realistic ones. Obviously, you can't put Tiger in this.
Right. I'm going to give best scenario for fans in general, I think, and best scenario for me personally. Best scenario for me personally is Rory Xander. It's not close. It's really not close. Best scenario for fans, I think, is Rory DJ. I would slot DJ in there ahead of Xander, or Rory Patrick Reed, honestly. Right. And maybe we're giving a little bit of the shaft here to a guy like Scottie Scheffler, who's the number 1 player in the world. But to me, it is good versus evil, right? And that is Rory DJ or Rory Patrick Reed. What about you?
I'm sorry, Scottie Scheffler, but like, there's no scenario in which you beat Rory McIlroy in any like interest-based calculation.
Right.
And
Completely
that's
agree.
what we're doing. Yeah. So
sorry for Cam Smith too, who like it would be great,
it'd be
but
cool.
I'm sorry. Rory DJ is a better final grip.
Rory DJ is, I believe, objectively the correct answer. That would, I mean, it would break view. It would just be it would melt my brain. If I could just open it up to anybody, like personally, I mean, Rory and
Spieth.
I was trying to find out how far Spieth is back. So Spieth's,
I don't think Spieth's out of this.
All right, so he's 4 under. Spieth getting in the mix would be amazing. Victor getting in the mix would be amazing. And even Rahm getting in the mix would be amazing.
Right.
But like having a Spieth or Rory or a Spieth and Rory in the final group would be, that wouldn't be good versus evil, but it would be like these two guys could not play golf any differently, Rory Mcilroy and Jordan Spieth, and they're going to battle it out at this golf course that is not fair. And like, that would be fun. That would be really fun.
Yep. So good versus evil, Rory or Spieth versus a live guy is definitely the correct answer. Hipster answer. What about a Phoenix or a TPC River Highlands rematch with Sahith Scheffler or Sahith Xander coming down the stretch? Honestly, Sahith might be a little bit too much of a hipster answer, but if Sahith really sticks around, inject all the Sahith into my veins coming down the stretch. He is so much fun to watch. His body language, his emotions, like Sahith, anyone would be pretty awesome.
There is a compelling side of someone who is either going for their first major, going for their first win, or someone who's very, very volatile, because there's also the thought and the question in the back of everyone's mind of, when is this guy going to implode? Right? Or like, when is this going to go very, very sideways? Which is why Jordan Spieth's great, because it's like, when is Jordan Spieth going to take over and make every putt? Or when is Jordan Spieth going to melt down? That's why he's the best viewing experience. So there would be that side of things of someone like a Tagala, or I mean, there's not even a lot. Like even Gooch. Like if Gooch was up there, you'd be like, is Gooch going to melt at any point, or is he just going to snap off and win his first major? That would be interesting.
Let me ask you one last question then. The only other guy that Bryson's just started his round 2, right?
Well, he was a couple over par today. Let's see. Okay, so he's one over. He's played 12 holes, so he's been out there.
So 2 under for the tournament. He's
2
probably
under
too
for the
far
tournament.
back.
He's in T41. Yes, and he's on 13 right now.
Okay, because I believe that he deserves a mention in this conversation as well. He would be a top 3 guy down the stretch that I'd like, but it seems like he's a little too far back.
This is
go ahead,
Brian. Like Sahith with a 2-shot lead over 6 just lions, right?
Yeah.
And have it just be like the
like Phoenix,
like a gazelle, right? Can this gazelle outrun these lions, or are they just going to track him down here?
Okay, give me last question. Give me real quick, biggest surprise and biggest disappointment for you.
Biggest disappointment, and I haven't checked where he is recently, is Zalatoris. Let's see where he's at. So a guy, okay, he's even today. He's 1 over, so he's got to get a move on, but he's got a lot of holes to play. I don't know if I necessarily thought this was a great spot for him, like a Torrey Pines or like somewhere else like that, but you can't be T86 at the Open Championship. You just can't be. He's too good. You can't happen. So that to me, it's, I think, the biggest disappointment. And then the biggest surprise, maybe like a Paul Casey was playing really well, right? Like we hadn't seen him do much of anything for the last couple of months. That was a pretty big surprise. And I'd also probably throw in. No, that's about it.
I think that's a good answer. I think Zalatoris is a good answer. I did not love Zalatoris heading into the week, so
I knew that. And I think you're right. Like right, and I think there were obvious like concerns or like course fits, but guys who are that good should be like, when you have a bad fit, you should be like 33rd.
Yeah. So there are a couple guys that are battling to make the cut. A couple guys. Max Homa was a really popular DFS guy this week. I'm going to forgive him on that one.
Yeah.
He was playing with Tiger. He's probably going to miss the cut on the number. Shane Lowry Colin Morikawa, and Justin Thomas are all kind of right on the cut line. JT just made an eagle.
But that okay, JT's probably the correct answer here, where it's like, dude, you have not sniffed contention. Now there's time, but like you got to start making a move right now.
Right. 100%. Because this has been his weakest major, but everything kind of on paper suggests that this should be a really good major for him, actually. So, yeah, I would say, I mean, are you disappointed with Morikawa in his title defense, like hovering around even par?
I'm not disappointed because I think kind of one of the cases I made, they're showing Phil for this is like the first shot I've seen of Phil.
High flyers.
Yanks it right. Like outside of the three of the 4 rounds at the US Open, Morikawa hasn't been good recently. So he's got like 17 subpar rounds and 3 good rounds in his last 20. So I'm not sure I'm particularly surprised or disappointed by that. It's just like, it's not, he hasn't been in good form. He's been talking about not being able to hit his little baby cut. He's been trying to draw. He's just in between stuff right now.
I'll throw out 2 more guys that were kind of not popular picks, but if they were in contention, I don't think anyone would have been super shocked, and they're just not playing great. Louis and Brooks, 2 live guys that haven't really. I think Louis going to miss the cut. Brooks looks like he's going to make the cut, but he's kind of battling right on that line. I wouldn't call either of them surprising, because what indication have they given us in terms of recent form that they were going to be great? But I mean, I don't think Louis ever lost in regulation at the old course. And, we're barely 3 years removed from Brooks being, the most prolific major championship golfer in the world. So
yeah, those are good ones. John Daly might make the cut.
God, that'd be great.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
What a guy. All right, Andy. Pleasure as always. You and I will be back on Tuesday. We've got the 3M Open next week, but I think you and I are just gonna enjoy the weekend. There are a lot of scenarios. Most scenarios that will play out are going to be awesome. So I'm just going to enjoy it, and I'm sure you will too.
I can't wait, man. I think that without a doubt, it's going to be interesting, right? There are a lot of possibilities that could happen over the weekend, but man, I am so excited. And so far, the old course has delivered on every level.
The other Andy, M, lets us know that the PrizePicks headliners in round 1 again won 17, 11, and 6. That improves their overall record to something, something, and something. We'll update that at some point, but use the code Rick over at PrizePicks. There's a link in the description. Get yourself all fired up for rounds 3 and 4 and their massive slates coming. For now, let me thank Armina. She does all the hard work behind the scenes. Andy Lack's available on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your Friday Scramble. See you next time.